In the past, we never interpreted strategic autonomy as neutrality. It didn't mean that you opted out. It meant you had the autonomy to express your own views, to speak for yourself, to speak for India. Not necessarily that you joined one side or the other in a conflict. And you always, that didn't mean that you made everyone happy. Suez, for instance. Certainly, Britain, France, and so on, Israel didn't like what you did. But neither did the more militant non-aligned countries, because they thought that you were negotiating with the US to try and calm things down.
I don't know why we are silent, but when I look at all of this from the outside, and in the last few months I've been sitting in Hyderabad and watching Delhi, the impression you get, Mr. Sibal, is that the foreign policy of personal dealings, it's a deal-making policy. So we have some deals with the leadership in UAE, we have deals with leadership in Israel. This highly personalized foreign policy where you are promoting business interests, working one-to-one with leaders of other countries.
The developing world. I don't see that much of a contradiction because neither of these would be normally very political organizations. What makes it interesting is in this year, India is due to be the chairperson of both. India is due to host both.
Okay.
And in this particular war, we have lost, amongst other things, we've lost the opportunity to guide these organizations in the year in which we were supposed to be the leader.
That's going to
Well,
change.
this is precisely their problem. If you were a Gulf state, what's your options today? Either you rely on the Americans, but that invites attacks.
Yes.
If you don't have the Americans there, you have no protection. Is that better? So you look for hedging options. You look to Pakistan, you look to whoever else you can find. You try and build up your own forces.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do now.
No, but there's a limit to what you could do. If you're a country where 60%, 80% of your population is expatriates.
Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we'll talk about what's happening in the war between the US, Israel, and Iran. Now, you remember in June, there was a 12-day war, and we are in the 12th day of the present war, and much has happened. And India relies heavily on essentials of economic growth come from West Asia. I'll give you a small example. For example, we depend about 80 to 90% of our crude oil from the world, but 50 to 60% are imported from West Asia. Now, $70 billion worth of crude oil came from West Asia in 2025. And the price of crude was 60 to 65 before the war. It's now 90 to 93. And every $10 increase results in a burden of $14 billion of excess payment. So if another $10, $20, $30 increase would result in what? In about $42 billion. And that's about 1 lakh crore. $14 billion is around 1 lakh crore. That's the extent to which we rely on import of crude oil from West Asia. Then LPG. 40-odd% of the LPG that we import is from Qatar, and the production in Qatar has stopped. Now, we also import natural gas, again from that part of the world. Fertilizers, potash, we import potash from there, fertilizers from there. Our fertilizer industry will be impacted. Then gems and trade and diamonds, that industry will be impacted. Manufacturing and petrochemicals, our plastic industry, even our textile industry is going to be impacted. Construction and infrastructure, the roads that we do, there again we need petrochemicals. That industry will be impacted. Metals and industrial commodities, that too. Our remittances that come from that part of the world are 5% of our total remittances. Those will be impacted. Security of our people will be impacted. Our shipping industry will be impacted. The insurance premiums have gone up. and now the ships have to go around Africa. So the transportation costs will be affected in every possible way. Now, we're not going to talk about this. I gave this introduction to show how much dependent we are on West Asia. But we're going to talk about our diplomatic positions, our positions in foreign policy. Why did we take them? On the one hand, we are part of Quad, which includes Japan, Australia, the United States of America, and us. And at the other hand, we're also part of BRICS, which is China and Russia. Now, we've aligned ourselves so far with Israel that it's difficult for us to negotiate with our friends in West Asia in the context of what's happened. And particularly Iran, because through Iran, we reach the Central Asian republics. Through Iran, we reach Afghanistan. And the Chahabar port now, obviously, is a non-starter. So I have three extraordinary guests with whom we're going to discuss as to what are the implications and why we have taken this foreign policy position. Is it in the long-term interests of India? And what do we do now? These are the issues, perhaps, that we'll take forward during the course of this discussion. We have, of course, Shiv Shankar, you've been here before. You are presently visiting professor in Ashoka University, chair their China studies. You're a fellow there, and you've been to every part, most important capitals of the world, you've been there as ambassador, whether it's Beijing, or it's Israel, or it's Pakistan, or it's Tokyo, Sri Lanka. You've been everywhere, so you know this part of the world, and you'll be able to tell us. Of course, most important of all, you negotiated the Indo-US deal and the waiver from the nuclear suppliers group. You were also NSA in the Dr. Saab's government. Now, Sanjay, thank you for being here. Economist, journalist, academic, policy advisor. Thank you very much for being here. You did your economics and you got your PhD from JNU. You were editor of Business Standard for a while. You've written for Economic Times. You worked for Economic Times. And you have roles in ICRIAR and CPR. And you were also, when I was a minister, you were Dr. Manmohan Singh Media Advisor for 2 years. You're a member of NSAB. Thank you, Suhasini, for being here with me today. Again, you've got the kind of experience very few journalists have, especially in the area of foreign policy and international politics. You're the diplomatic editor of The Hindu as we speak. You got your master's from Boston University College of Communication. You worked with CNN in New York, then CNN New Delhi in 95, and 95 to 2005, CNN International. And you looked at India, Pak, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. So you know this area very well. Got several awards. We won't go through all of them because it'll take the whole evening. But thank you, all of you, for being here. Let me ask you, what's the impact of our decision to be so close to Israel and the United States of America? And what does it tell you about the foreign policy postures we've taken right from Nehru's time till date? Isn't there a complete shift in our foreign policy? And what does it bode for the future for us?
I think it's certainly different in the way it's coming across today to what previous governments of India did. Even though all these governments swear by strategic autonomy. But I think in the past, we never interpreted strategic autonomy as neutrality. It didn't mean that you opted out. It meant you had the autonomy to express your own views, to speak for yourself, to speak for India. Not necessarily that you joined one side or the other in a conflict. And you always, that didn't mean that you made everyone happy. Suez, for instance. Certainly, Britain, France, and so on, Israel didn't like what you did. But neither did the more militant, non-aligned countries, because they thought that you were negotiating with the US to try and calm things down. So the problem with this is it's hard to see how this present stance, so closely identified with one side, and the side that initiated the conflict, is serving India's interests.
And just 2 days after the Prime Minister went to Israel on 26th of February. On 28th, the attack took place. What's the message that is sent to the rest of the world?
It doesn't look good. There's no question. And I think some degree of explanation is called for, because otherwise people will ascribe the worst motives to it.
But we know that we have a lot of stake in West Asia, as I explained. And of course, the government knows even better. Then this is even more inexplicable.
But the shift is really, in West Asia, we've always managed, no matter what, to actually deal with all the regional powers, even when they were fighting with each other.
Absolutely.
I mean, through the 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, we were dealing with Israel right through. It's not as though we didn't deal with Israel before we opened embassies in the 90s. And at the same time, Egypt was very close to us.
Yes.
We worked with Iraq, we worked with Iran, we worked to a lesser extent
We even
with
quit the Iran-Iraq war.
Yeah. And we stayed out of their domestic politics.
Exactly.
We didn't get into the kinds of relationships where we were dragged into their fights, unlike Pakistan, which was involved in their internal politics. I think those are the bits that don't seem to hold anymore. And that's the worrying part, because one's not quite sure why we are taking these stances.
No, but I mean, we also have lost in the process of moral authority in the world, but we used to have to some extent.
Well, if you don't speak, nobody knows what you think. And they will ascribe to you the worst motives, to your silence.
Sanjay, now, do you think we've also lost our leadership role that we had in the Global South in the process?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, after all, we salvaged the G20 summit in India after the way in which it ended in Indonesia by converting that into a Voice of the Global South summit.
Yes.
That was our way of salvaging our G20 summit. Yes. And we pretended as if we were bringing to the high table of the G7 the views of the Global South. Today, we are completely isolated on this issue from large parts of the Global South, from other members of BRICS, Brazil, South Africa. And as Shiv Shankar has said, I mean, as you have said, we are identified ourselves completely with Israel and the United States, which is inexplicable, even from purely Indian interest point of view.
Right.
You know, forget about morality, ethics, etc. From a purely pragmatic Indian interest point of view, this kind of extreme position we have taken, I don't think in the Global South, since that was your question, people will look up to India anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you, because even South Africa made a not so strong a statement as Brazil, but they did make some statement, but we are silent. And why are we silent for so long?
Well, I don't know why we are silent, you know, but when I look at all of this from the outside, and in the last few months I've been sitting in Hyderabad and watching Delhi, the impression you get, Mr. Sibal, is that the foreign policy of personal dealings, you know, it's a deal-making policy. So we have some deals with the leadership in UAE, we have deals with leadership in Israel. You know, this highly personalized foreign policy where you are promoting business interests, working one-to-one with leaders of other countries, I think that has constrained institutionalization of this policy. So when you look at it from outside, you say, okay, this guy and this guy met, they've made some deal, the other chap is benefiting from this deal. You see the whole series of deals, and they call this economic diplomacy, right? But how much of it is really economic diplomacy? How much of it is deal making with many of these countries, whether it's UAE or Israel or, you know, Greece? I mean, you can give a long list of countries with which.
No, Reliance is having a petrochemical.
Reliance is bailing you out with Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
So this kind of economic diplomacy, which is essentially deal making, is highly suspect. I mean, I don't know what's happening inside, but when you look at it from the outside, you say this is not on.
You mean to say business interests are overriding our national foreign policy?
That's the impression I get. You know, as I said, I'm now looking at all of this
what do you
from
think?
a distance.
I think he's right about the personalization. that you've lost the institutionalization of foreign policy and the larger sense of where your place in the world, what kind of world you want to create, that the purpose of foreign policy is to create an enabling environment for India's transformation, growth, economy, and so on. And that it's become transactional and personalized to a point where
because you get people from the industry getting into defense, you know who I'm talking about. They get into defense deals, and so therefore there are huge interests of big industry in getting contracts, and that's benefiting, and therefore that impacts foreign policy in a sense. So in a sense, our business interests in the country are overriding our national interest.
I don't mind that if it's a transparent policy. When after all, promoting the interests of Indian business is part of government's remit.
Of course, yes.
But the manner in which these have been happening, I think there is no transparency. And that the fact that very few people are benefiting from these
that's
deals.
the point. That's the point.
In fact, one person more than anybody else. It gives the impression that this whole thing has now become a highly individualistic, personalized, what people call crony capitalist diplomacy.
So Hasni, let me turn to you on a slightly different topic. How does the government of India be part of BRICS on the one hand, part of Quad on the other hand, and how will they be able to manage both in the context of what's happening today and what our foreign policy position is?
Well, it's very interesting that you asked that question and you referred to this at the beginning, because apart from everything else, apart from the membership of these two very, very disparate groupings, if you like, and I don't see, if India was to stick to its traditional tenets of strategic autonomy, of whether you want to call it multi-alignment or non-alignment or multipolarity, whichever way you want to describe it, if India was to stick to those tenets, there should be no problem. There are some things we do in the Quad which are very specific to a regional, to a geographical region, the Indo-Pacific. There are some areas where we try to help other countries in the region. There are, it's got many parts to it. And there's what we do with the BRICS, which is the voice of these emerging economies that have now grown from 5 to 10. And we work on economic issues and other issues that affect the developing world. I don't see that much of a contradiction because neither of these would be normally very political organizations. What makes it interesting is in this year, India is due to be the chairperson of both. India is due to host both.
Okay.
And in this particular war, we have lost, amongst other things, we've lost the opportunity to guide these organizations in the year in which we were supposed to be the leader. Mm-hmm. There is no BRICS position today, simply because it is, there's actually an SCO position now. Right. But it is our responsibility to formulate a BRICS position. How are we going to formulate that when Iran is a member there? Correct. And how are we going to formulate anything with the Quad, which depends on Mr. Trump coming here? Right. It's been 2 years, actually, since the Quad was supposed to have been held in Delhi, first with Mr. Biden, then with Mr. Trump. We've been unable to bring the US president here. So I think that itself creates an opportunity. And so far, we have not taken advantage of that opportunity to build a sense of leadership. If we were to helm any statement on this war, which, as you have pointed out, is hurting everyone, hurting the whole world in so many different ways, that would have been a moment. But
Trump would increase tariffs if we do something like that?
Well, I don't see how any policy, after all, we are now today suffering for so many of our decisions on the basis of what Mr. Trump is going to do. Right. In 2019, when he insisted that we give up oil from Iran, and we concurred, and he said give up oil from Venezuela, and we concurred, we could have been benefiting from that oil, we could have been storing it or whatever. We would have today had a very different position when it comes to the Hormuz Straits. We would have had leverage in different ways. But we gave that up. We whetted his appetite so that he nearly made us completely give up Russian oil as well. Right. So I don't see how making Mr. Trump happy can be a real objective, because nobody knows how it is. But I do agree with you that some of the, the unanswered question of why is India's position today being seen as one-sided has to be taken in that prism of risk or damage control, if you like, that you kind of minimize the risk from the US being upset with us. Having come through a year of such tensions with the US, it seems as if the government is risk averse and doesn't want to say anything. That is why you can have 8 statements in which you criticize Iran for its attacks on the Gulf. You criticize Iran for the attacks on oil facilities, on specific bases, on specific in UAE, on buildings. But you have not one single statement in which you criticize the US and Israel for starting the war, for killing the head of a state, for the bombing, even if it's mistaken, of a school where 168 people died. Well, it certainly shows that we are stuck, as Dr. Baru said, that we are constrained, that we are unable to say what should be plain on the face. After all, when a ship that had come to India for naval exercises, full of these young sailors who were on a training exercise, is blown up by the US in what is called the Indian Ocean.
Right.
And to date, we have not issued a single statement.
Right.
I don't know if that changes, but it's already been very late. And as a result, it's beginning to look as if we are in some way constrained from saying anything that may upset one side, while we are not doing enough in terms of the other side, which we also need.
Okay, let me ask you a further question on this, because you said there's no politicization or politics involved in the BRICS. I think there's a lot of politics involved in the BRICS, quite frankly.
Yes.
And the de-dollarization is one aspect.
I said it should be possible to leave the politics out and look at these organizations.
How will it be possible? How will it be possible? What's happening? And this is why I want to ask you this question. This war has also forced Russia and China, much closer than they were. Right? And this is going to continue. And they have a political agenda now, which is going to be which will be obvious at any BRICS meeting, or when we take over the presidency. And we'll have to deal with it. Right? With the position that we have taken, we'd be embarrassed because we'll not be able to go with them. Then how do we deal with this matter?
I think for the moment we will just kick the can down the road, just as we did some years ago when we had this similar kind of tussle between the Quad and the SCO. And we turned the SCO overnight into an online meeting, and because we were dealing with the US and with France and all these other countries. I would guess that that's more of what we are going to do in this year as well, especially given that there is no possibility of a BRICS meeting which does not take into account the new tussle that we're seeing between Iran and UAE as well. So in a moment when India was to have helmed it, to have not gotten ahead of what is obviously going to be the problem, will be a lost opportunity.
I think, Shiv Shankar, do you agree that?
Well, I think given the situation, because this conflict has politicized
it's going to come up.
Everything.
It's going to come up. Yes.
Your only answer is that as chairman, my opinions, my stance have nothing to do with it. I'm just chair of a meeting. I reflect what the meeting will agree. If the meeting doesn't agree, I don't agree.
It's but that will impact our position.
No, that's where, if you make that absolutely clear right at the beginning, then the fact that the meeting didn't agree and failed is not my failure.
No, but if they criticize the United States of America and you keep quiet, and Trump doesn't like it, he may...
They will do what they do. And that you can't stop. And you are a democracy still. Yeah. So you can't stop other people from saying what they say.
Right.
But your job as chairman is not to say anything that BRICS success is my success. It's not. It's BRICS success. I'm just the chair. I'm the instrument of the meeting.
Good. I'm glad you're giving this advice, because I hope...
I'm not giving any advice to anybody. Because nobody's asking me for
I know that, but it's good enough. I think people will listen to what you're saying. But I still think that situations will come where we will be embarrassed.
It will be. No, you have to
and
choose.
It's not going to be easy.
No, and the fact is...
They might want to pass a resolution against the United States
But
for this
this is
war.
why it's important to carve out an independent position of your own, which is independent of both these sides who will want to drag you onto their side.
Yes.
But if you don't have a position of your own, it's much easier. Their job is much easier. And they'll play your public opinion, they'll use all the levers that they have, all the transactionalism that they can find to try and drag you in. And your whole point is, frankly, you should be serving India's interests.
Yes.
Not allowing them to use every forum that you chair for their interests.
But tell me, in the context of BRICS, on the other hand, in Quad, what is it that we can gain? Because
Nothing.
But that's the point.
Sorry, cut you short. Nothing. Quad is now completely meaningless.
It's meaningless.
Because let's look at it. It was formed originally as a way of kind of keeping China under check. We have changed our position on China.
Exactly.
So has the US.
We have now.
So has the US.
So has the US.
Yes.
We have opened up even to some extent Chinese investments.
10% on the automatic route.
So I actually think India would be quite happy if the Quad summit doesn't happen, because it will be very embarrassing to be sitting as chair of Quad at a time when you're asking Chinese investments to come into India.
That's the point I was making, that where do we really get nothing from being a member of the Quad.
Absolutely.
And the US is very clear it's not going to help us on anything.
Absolutely.
But that makes Pakistan's position extremely strategic in this part of the world.
Well, I think Pakistan has played some cards. The longer sort of arc will tell us how successful they've been. But the fact that as of now, Pakistan has mended its fences with Tehran, that we saw Mr. Pezeshkian call the Pakistani leadership along with his call to Mr. Putin, that we saw Pakistan's army chief, his field marshal, as well as the leadership go to Saudi Arabia, and they are part of a defense pact over there. At the same time, we see Pakistan being part of all the Gulf positions, but then not having any kind of antagonism with Iran. You know, they have condemned
they made a statement,
the attack. They have welcomed Mr. Mujtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader. So they have seemed to have, as Mr. Menon said, that if the point of foreign policy and diplomacy is just to expand your options, they seem to have expanded some of their options. Our position, the real problem with our position is it is narrowing our options at present with what we can and cannot say.
Well, how does this impact our relationships with the Gulf countries, right? Because of the fact that most of them are Sunni and Iraq is Shia, and we've made a statement saying that we're sorry that that Iran attacked the other countries. And so how do you think that's going to work out in the context of the conflict?
I think it remains to be seen, because this defense pact between Pakistan and Saudi, for instance, commits Pakistan to defending Saudi Arabia with all available means.
That's correct.
According to the text,
correct.
Which logically would include nuclear.
Right.
But neither side has invoked it, even though Saudi Arabia has been attacked just now. So it remains to be seen. I think all of them are hedging. None of them know where this is going to end. None of them know where it's, they don't know who they can rely on. They can't rely on either their traditional guarantors, which is the US and others. Certainly the US, all the bases, everything, they haven't defended the Gulf countries. But they can't turn, there's no one else to turn to in terms of immediate physical presence. So Pakistan is useful because she's available for strategic rent to whoever, and that's traditional Pakistani practice. But beyond that, I think they're still at the stage of assessing where they'll end up at the end of it. But clearly, after this conflict, whenever it ends, however long it takes, there's no going back to the old ways.
Yes.
So they will look for other outside powers. And that's where there's actually an opportunity for India. It seems to me this is a process of churn that we're watching in West Asian geopolitics. There's an attempt by Israel and the US to remake West Asian geopolitics entirely in their favor. right? To knock out all the alternatives, such as Iran, and to ensure that there's no, Egypt is now so concerned with their own developments. So to make sure that they can redraw the map, in a sense. Syria has been done. You can see what's happened to Iraq.
Yes.
But I'm not so sure that they're winning, or that they will manage successfully to create a new Middle East.
The kind of statements that are coming from Iran suggest that, look, if you're going to stop this war, you're going to have to tell us that you respect our rights. You have to pay reparations to us.
And promise never again.
And promise never again. So obviously Iran is taking a very strong position on this. So obviously it's not being decimated the way that Trump says it's being decimated. That's quite clear. But I was wanting to ask another question from you. I think the Gulf countries, whether it's Bahrain or it's other Gulf countries, having the air bases there is something that Iran says, we're going to keep bombing you because we're not against you, but if these air bases are going to be used against us, we have no choice but to bomb you, right? And they've been actually targeting them. This impacts US Gulf relationships, yes, right? Because they don't want to be dragged into the war. So don't you think it's going to impact the future relationships of the Gulf country, apart from the business side, diplomatic relationships, and not allowing their territory to be used for the purposes of attacking another country? Don't you think that's going to change?
Well, this is precisely their problem. If you were a Gulf state, what's your options today? Either you rely on the Americans, but that invites attacks.
Yes.
If you don't have the Americans there, you have no protection. Mm-hmm. Is that better? So you look for hedging options. You look to Pakistan, you look to whoever else you can find. You try and build up your own forces.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do now.
No, but there's a limit to what you could do. If you're a country where 60%, 80% of your population is expatriates, if your size is so small, these are not so easy to defend.
But they were not in conflict with Iran at any point in time.
Well, but then the choice is between being totally undefended and therefore being politically open to influence and other people manipulating you.
But where's the occasion for them to be worried about the fact that Iran will attack them? Iran's position is quite clear.
I am not going to speculate on Iranian motives and what they'll do in the future and what they think and whether they want revenge for the past or what they do. Frankly, that I think is really dangerous. But certainly they can't go on in this situation where they have no options which are good. These are all terrible options that they face today. Exactly. So there is going to be a huge churn. And either the GCC itself changes its nature, either Saudi UAE start repairing their relationship.
Yes.
They'll start doing other things among themselves. People will start going nuclear.
Right.
Because you have the ultimate deterrent then.
Well, that's what
So the options, there's a whole host of things, but they will try and get out of this bind, where your only choices are between two impossible situations.
But now the new Ayatollah has said that, look, my father was negotiating with you, I'm going to build the bomb. It's 60%, and it's likely to be 92% the fissile material. What are you going to do about that if they actually build the bomb? What happens to the world?
They will.
The non-proliferation treaty is down.
The old regime is gone.
It's gone.
It's gone in Europe. It's gone in Northeast Asia. It's going in the Middle East.
Japan will.
So this is becoming a very dangerous world.
Finland is
becoming a very dangerous world. So what is the impact of that?
Well, I can't say much about what will happen in the world, but what worries me really is I think the Indian growth process is getting stalled.
Yes, of course.
I don't see enough focus on that at the moment in the Indian media. But
do you see any focus in the Indian media at all?
Not enough. There are stray articles.
On behalf of the Indian media, I would say.
But the fact is that I think this is going to have a serious impact on our growth process. Apart from the increase in oil prices and then access to other materials, I think there's a certain element of uncertainty that has crept into the global economy. And people are going to be risk averse. To restore trust in the global system. I mean, after all, don't forget, in the last 4-5 years, more FDI has gone out of India than has come into India.
That's
right?
true. That's
so
true.
there's a flight of capital that's been happening for the last 4 or 5 years when the world was stable.
Right.
In an unstable situation, I would imagine there'll be a flight to safety. A lot of countries will pull back. They'll wait and watch. And given the positions we have taken, there'll be some uncertainty about the impact here. I mean, after all, so far things are quiet. But God knows tomorrow at home, if there are different kinds of reactions to what has happened in Iran and what has happened in the region. So I worry for the Indian economy. I think the short-term impact of this calendar year, I mean this financial year, is going to be serious.
I agree.
And the budget will be out of sync. The fiscal deficit targets cannot be met.
Cannot be.
Right? Inflation is going up. So you have a higher fiscal deficit, you have higher inflation, slower growth, and trade is being impacted because of movement of ships in the...
your remittances come down, your FDI goes out.
So actually I think we need to
FII
seriously
goes
worry.
out.
We need to seriously worry about the consequence of what is happening there for us.
Yeah, but they should have worried it before they start taking
Absolutely.
these positions.
Absolutely.
They didn't think it through. Could we have done it differently, Suhasini?
No, I certainly think first question is the Prime Minister's visit to Israel. The idea that he went there at a time when the build-up had already begun. I'm told by people that that it was quite obvious that there would be some kind of American intervention coming, just given by the number of planes, the number of bombers, the number of refuelers that were obviously coming through the region. So that happens as the Prime Minister is going in. He doesn't seek to, during his visit, speak about peace. He doesn't seek to, during his visit...
16 agreements he signed.
And the agreements may have been transactional. It was the statement he made in the Knesset that we stand with Israel shoulder to shoulder now in this moment and beyond. I think there was no sense of moderation there. It was an all-out kind of statement. The idea that he did all of this and came back to India 2 days before leads one to that question. Did the Israelis take Prime Minister Modi into confidence, say that this was being planned? Because these kind of operations are not planned.
He must have known. There's no doubt about that.
I don't know if there is any doubt about it, because on the other hand, could it have been that he genuinely didn't know?
No, he's not so naive to think that.
And the third option would be
He's
complicity
very smart.
in all of that. So if that is the case, then we have to consider where that is coming from. Is it, as I said again, a desire not to make the US unhappy? Is it a desire to please Israel at this time? Was it some kind of miscalculation that on February the 28th, after the bombing that killed Mr. Khamenei, his family, and 40 advisors, that in fact Iran's regime was finished, and that India should now start preparing itself to deal with a new regime and not the outgoing one? Was that a calculation which was clearly a miscalculation at that time? They've already survived 2 weeks in that position. Those are all questions we are going to have to ask. At some point, we have to go back and see why we did what we did. That it took 5 days to even say the basic condolences and to sign a condolence book means that there was some thought that we should go the opposite direction. And then there was a rethink. And I think...
Well, no rethink merely because they've signed the condolence book.
No, there was a rethink of the optics. Of the optics of India.
I think people believe this optics is meaningless. If you don't go to somebody and don't make a public statement, Prime Minister remains quiet ever since this war started. And then somebody goes and signs a condolence book. Surely,
and that
it's not going to convince India, it's not to convince the rest of the world. That's quite clear. So there's no change of position. They just had to do it. That's it.
What you're saying is the most frightening, perhaps, that India is seeking just not to be seen in all of this. Meanwhile, ensuring that they don't make any statement that in any way annoys one side, which is the US-Israel side. It's not just the attacks on Iran. There are attacks on Lebanon where 634 people have died. In Iran, 1,300 civilians have died. These are numbers in the 100 times more than the numbers of civilian casualties in the entire Gulf today.
Right.
But we have only talked about what is happening in the Gulf countries and not about what is happening in Iran.
We are Netanyahu's friends and Trump's friends, and we get so much support from them in every possible way.
I think there are support from so many others as well. And I do feel, unlike what you are suggesting, I do feel the government has been made aware of that. And today, if you look at what the government is negotiating, we are having to negotiate with the Iranians to seek permission to cross the Hormuz Straits. That's not an easy position to have reached after taking the kind of position.
Because we know, as he rightly said, Sanjay said, if we don't do it, we're going to be in deep trouble.
We have asked Azerbaijan for help to take Indian students and pilgrims out of Iran.
Supported Pakistan.
1 year ago, we even refused to use that route because we said they were with Pakistan during Operation Sindoor.
Yes.
So we have had to climb down on a lot of different
That's not climbing down on foreign policy. I have very little experience in foreign policy.
But foreign policy is becoming this transactional thing.
Yeah, as Sanjay said. But could we have done this differently is what I'm asking you.
I think we could have, but frankly, there's not much point crying over spilt milk. It seems to me more important.
Okay, can we do things differently now?
We should be doing things now to prepare for what's coming.
What are the things we can do?
That's predictable. You can see what's going to happen to the world economy. You can see the continuing turmoil in the Middle East. I mean, there's no easy solution to this. Even if, Mr. Trump declares victory tomorrow and goes home, there's still going to be a whole host of things that you'll have to deal with. You can see the effects on your other South Asian neighbors, their economies. Now is the time for you to integrate the neighborhood. Step up and do something about it. So this is a time where actually you should be looking forward and doing things for the future. We can go on beating ourselves up about what we didn't do, sins of omission, commission, going to Israel, all this. But frankly, that, to my mind, is over. It's time now to actually prepare for what we're going to face, which is not going to be easy. It's not going to, but it's not more of the same, and there's no going back.
Okay. Let me ask.
And the US, which is not interested in the world.
We wanted to
After this, they'll be even less interested.
I agree.
I was just going to add, we wanted to be the voice of the global South. We are not the voice of South Asia, nor do we have a voice of our own. I mean, imagine the shrinking voice.
But silence here is most eloquent because you know why we are silent.
Sorry, you were asking something.
I was asking you this. Supposing we were to tell the United States, look, we're going to buy oil from Russia. You do what you want, right? That is, according to me, strategic autonomy.
Of course.
Because we are looking at the future.
Of course.
Would you support that kind of?
Of course.
You do?
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Why should we succumb to, they've given us a waiver for 30 days, they'll give us a waiver for another 30
utter
days.
nonsense.
We're 1.4 billion people.
See, the official position from whatever I've seen in the media is that we are saying, oh, we didn't listen to the Americans. We are anyway buying. We reduced what we wanted in the last few weeks. We have now increased what we are buying from the Russians. So our purchase depends on our interest.
Exactly.
Is nothing to do with the Americans.
Right.
But you don't speak up. You don't say that we have nothing to, we are not going to allow anyone to dictate this to us. Yes. When it is being dictated, when the spokesperson at the White House actually says, we have allowed India.
Yes.
We don't object. The number of statements.
As an Indian, I just felt appalled.
Of course.
For another country.
But should you not have been appalled since, I think, September, when Mr. Trump first said India is going to reduce its intake of Russian oil, and he was proven right. From November until January, we cut our Russian oil by 50%. Today, we are increasing our Russian oil simply after the US has said we're giving you
I'm appalled because of the statement of the United States saying we'll give you a waiver for 30 days. That's what I agree with your position.
But
we've agreed with Iran, we agreed for a 60-day waiver and then a 6-month waiver in 2019, and finally we zeroed out. Now we will see with Iran again on Chabahar. Whether in April we continue our lease for Chabahar, who knows? As you said, everything's going to be reworked.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the same thing with Russia, and we need to assert that we are.
So
you're quite right.
We should say
that we need to assert that we will not be listening to these unilateral sanctions, because we have listened on 5 occasions in the last 6 years. And each time we have had to rethink that decision. As I said, you're going back to Iran, you're going back to Azerbaijan, you're going back to Russia and saying, please now up the amount of oil you're sending us. These are decisions that should never be taken again. I think that's one thing going forward that we should do. And
you know,
do you agree with that?
The basis of the improvement and the transformation in India-US relations was Condoleezza Rice saying that the rise of India is in the US interest.
Yes.
You now have the US Deputy Secretary of State, Vaughan, coming to Raisina Dialogue and saying, we will not allow you to rise.
Exactly.
We will not allow you to do to us what China did to us.
Exactly.
This is the exact
Very
opposite.
disturbing.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to draw conclusions.
Yes, exactly.
You need to look at your relationship fundamentally all over again.
Absolutely.
You're in a whole different phase. And I think this is what worries me, that there's no sign of any, you need a public debate. You can have many opinions on this, on what you should do, how to respond, and none of us is going to be 100% right all the time. Okay, but at least have the debate.
But you want to do, but you don't want to debate even in Parliament.
No, but nobody is omniscient, and you're certainly not omnipotent. So you might as well stand up and allow people to express themselves and have a real discussion on this. This is fundamental national interest going forward.
But if you don't want...
You're really at a hinge moment here, you know. And it worries me that we've closed our mind, shut our mouth, and we're going to face this.
It's never happened like that, quite frankly.
No, in fact, this has been happening now for a year. Actually, there's a pattern. The Americans are very consistent. The Trump administration has been very consistent. You look at the statements of their Commerce Secretary, their US Trade Representative, their Defense Secretary or War Secretary of War. You look at their statements over the last 1 year. The number of times they've used abusive language against India, the number of times they've derided India. You know, not one person from this government has spoken up against them. Not one.
That's diplomacy.
And I actually once wrote a column saying that last time Indians have heard this kind of talk from Washington, D.C. was Richard Nixon.
Yes.
You know, Richard Nixon abusing India. That's 71.
Yes.
After that, I have never heard this kind of language, which we have heard over the last 10 months. It's nothing to do with this war. 10 months we have heard this language. And now finally, as he says, the Deputy Secretary comes and makes the statement that we are not going to be part of India's rise. Thank you very much.
Okay, now let's move on, and this will be the last issue that I wish to raise. That now America is, everything that it does is unilateral. No doubt about that. China has benefited from him, according to me, hugely benefited, because China is quiet, and China and Russia have come closer. BRICS will be controlled by them. This is what I feel. So, in terms of the world, say tomorrow, where do you think we are going? Is it going to be truly a multipolar world?
It's not multipolar. I mean, not in any real sense. Multipolar assumes that several poles have a say.
Yeah, but you have the American pole.
No, actually today, if you look at world GDP, during the Cold War, NATO, Warsaw Pact accounted for over 80% of world GDP and over 80% of world military power.
Right.
Today, the two biggest powers, and they have no allies because, frankly, look what Trump is doing to his allies, and China doesn't have. China and the US account for less than 50% of world GDP, less than 50% of world military power.
Correct.
Power is distributed. That doesn't make it multipolar.
Okay.
It only makes it much harder for anybody to take any decisions and work.
Right.
Now, people can say we'll organize middle powers. It's a good idea. Governments like to say it's a multipolar world because it flatters them to think they are a present or future pole, right? And they tell their people, look at us, we count. But frankly, this is a disorderly world.
Yeah, but if
And
the
it's a
world order is broken down.
But for most of history, you haven't had a world order. There's never been a world order except in the last 2 centuries. And we've got fooled into the idea by the hegemon who wants you to believe that you need an order. otherwise you won't prosper, which is not true.
So it's bilateralism.
No, it's the normal anarchy of the international relations.
Okay.
It's disorder. There's no hegemon. Nobody is going to take decisions. So you'll have an international system. You can still get on a plane and your mobile phone will work at the other end. There will be passports, visas. These are rules of the road.
Right.
There's an international system, but there won't be an order. Get used to it.
Get used to it.
So W2 is gone.
Gone.
So I'm worried because if that's the case, then we in this part of the world are always at a disadvantage. And I've seen that happen all the time.
No, I'm particularly worried as an Indian. Forget about this part of the world. We thought we were taking off. We are not going to take off if this kind of situation persists, because our share of world trade is still very low.
Yeah.
We are not member of any regional or plurilateral trade grouping. We have not been able to negotiate anything with the East Asian economies, which is adequate for our trade. I don't see much happening with EU and UK, etc.
Exactly.
So and we talk of Atmanirbharta and self-reliance, but we are not investing enough at home. In the last 5, 6, 7 years, I forget now, the private capital formation to GDP ratio has not increased. It's stagnant. Capacity utilization across many
And now we're
industries.
going to lose jobs after AI.
Capacity utilization across many industries below 80%. So, we are at a stage where we need to have much higher rates of growth. I think Montek made the point that if you want to be Viksit Bharat by 2047, then for the next 20 years, you need an annual rate of growth of 9% per year.
Correct.
Not going to
Well,
happen.
I've been saying this, for a Viksit Bharat, you need a Shikshit Bharat.
Shikshit,
Where
of
is
course.
that Shikshit Bharat?
But the kind of acceleration that you require, I don't see at least this year.
No way. It's going to come down to 6%. And that is if the data is to be believed. That's the other part of it.
Yeah, we need to worry. I think there's a serious challenge for India.
So therefore I ask the question, in our negotiation, because everything will be bilateral, in our negotiations, we'll always be at a disadvantage, as we've always been. Because those who have got, in every possible way, we are less empowered than the rest of the world. Look at where our per capita income is. So where is our negotiating position in a bilateral situation?
Well, I'm going to say something you're going to say is idealistic, but I really feel that India does have a position. We are shielding it right now. We are kind of keeping it under the radar for other reasons. I think those are very short-term reasons. In the long term, India remains a country of its size, with a country of its population that has a potential to do great things because of its geographical location, because of the kind of plurality it has, the kind of diversity it has, and for at least most of the arc of its independent history has had a certain moral position. I think to lose any of these is always going to be to our disadvantage, because people are not looking to India to sell their next 150,000 motor bicycles, for example. But they are looking, if you believe that there is going to be no order in the world, then people will look to a country like India to produce some kind of sanity in the world. We are losing these opportunities. When I talk about the BRICS and the Quad, maybe these organizations mean nothing, but we could make something of them by taking positions that the world can agree upon, that at least all the sensible people in the world can see is a slight way forward. We can no longer just work on the idea of saying dialogue and diplomacy is the only way out, simply because we don't practice it ourselves. We don't practice it when it comes to Pakistan or even Bangladesh or any of the other countries that we have problems with. But we do need to go back to those tenets, and I think there is a place in the world for a country that shows new order. I'm not talking about middle powers, as Mr. Carney very beautifully and eloquently described, and then went right back to joining the G7 to back America on absolutely everything. But I'm speaking of the idea that the world is going to need heroes, if not leaders, to show a certain better way of being. This is not the way to
So our leader must become a hero.
I think our leader must make India the hero.
I agree. Become a hero means make India a hero. But I don't disagree with you in what you said. The only thing is we need to leverage the great advantage we have in terms of our population, in terms of our diversity, in terms of the fact that there is no other market in the world as big as us and as open as us. But for that, we have to fix things at home.
Correct.
Right.
Bring the GDP and the GDP per capita to a
exactly.
similar...
Bring things at home. Use your diversity to your advantage. If you use your diversity to the country's disadvantage, right, which is presently happening, you're going to be in this deep trouble. So that's what we need to do. I think we have a great future, and I agree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. But we're not doing it, and we haven't done it for the last 11 years.
I agree. And the last thing I should have said is the fact that we are a democracy sets us apart from many other big countries.
We should be a working democracy. It's all very well to say that we are a democracy, Suhasini.
Yeah,
we're not a working democracy.
It's all in the...
We're not a working democracy. We've not shown any sense of what democratic values are in any civilized society. And unless we show that and demonstrate that, I don't think we'll get back to the moral authority that we had in the rest of the world. What do you think? Last word from you.
I agree entirely with what Suhasini said. You can't write India off. India cannot, and India is bigger than any government or leader or, these are passing phenomena. But India is there are ways of doing this. You build coalitions.
Yes.
You will find partners. Depending on the issue, you will find different partners to work with. So you'll have to work hard at it. But you should speak for India and stand for India, and India should be seen as standing for something. That's where your strength came. That's how you punched well above your weight for most of your independent existence. And I think you can do it again.
Well, you can build, you should
build.
And
I'm actually saying this crisis is an opportunity for us to do that.
But you have to build your bridges at home before you do that, if you ask me.
You must have but you
need to set your own house in order.
You set your own house in order, and that's where the problem lies, right? And with those words, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.